Croeso pawb, welcome everyone. I'm here today down by my St John's Wort patch. St John's Wort yn Cymraeg, in Welsh, Eurinllys Trydwll. Eurinllys Trydwll. In fact, it's called, I know it as Eurinllys Trydwll, but it may have other names in other locations. It's one of my loves at the moment, starting to find out the names of the plants in different locations of Wales. And Hypericum perforatum is the Latin, but you know me and my Latin pronunciations. Now I've got my jar with me because I'm going to show you today how I make my St John's Wort oil. And I thought I would just bring you down when I come to harvest it. Now it's absolutely humming with bees. And why I want to harvest it now is because if I don't harvest it soon, it's going to start to go to seed. But if I harvest it now, I'd probably get at least another 2 crops from it. And I've got a nice patch here ready to harvest. Now you can ID Hypericum perforatum, there's a clue in the name, by looking at the leaves. If you get a leaf, now they're quite small, but if you hold it up to the light, you should see the little holes poked in there. And those little holes are the perforatum. Now the other way of IDing it is the Hypericum, which is the substance that gives the redness. So if you rub the flowers on your hand and you rub enough of them, I'm not sure if you'll see this in the camera, but you should start to see a red tone starting to appear on your hand. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to pick that up with the camera. Maybe if I come a little closer. You can just start to see it starting to appear on the top of my hand there. Now, Hypericum perforatum, Eurinllys Trydwll, grows really well here in Wales. I've got some growing wild up in the woods, but I've specifically planted this here as for ease of harvesting. Now the one thing about St John's Wort Eurinllys Trydwll you need to be aware of is that in some people it does have a photosensitivity. Now interestingly, I run many courses here and quite often get the local farmers coming on the course, and I was chatting to a local dairy farmer about the issue with the photosensitivity, because she was saying if she keeps it in her field, the cows can react to sunburn. And I noticed a bit of this the other day. I was down here. In fact, you might notice the top part, there's less weeds than in the bottom part, and I'll share with you why. The reason that is because I started weeding the top part, and I was noticing it was on a very hot day and I was coming out in all bumps. And I haven't had like a prickly heat almost like reaction. I haven't had that since I was a child. And I couldn't think what it was. And it happened 2 days in a run. And my partner said to me, what have you been doing these last 2 days? And then I realised I've been weeding this. So I think it was just the volume. So that is a contraindication. Now we're not talking about taking St John's Wort internally by making an oil. We're just talking about using St John's Wort topically. So, got my scissors. And I'm going to start harvesting, and I'll talk to you all about St John's Wort Eurinllys Trydwll while I harvest. Okay, so I've brought the camera a bit closer, and I'm hoping you can see me, you can see the St John's Wort, and you can see what I'm doing. I will do a close-up at some point. So I'm just grabbing the St John's Wort, and I want to pick it. I will have some leaves in, but just where it's starting to go a bit, the leaves are starting to go a bit yellow, so it's the top part that I'm picking. And then in my jar, try and do this one-handed so I can show you. I'm going to simply, in fact if I put it there it might be easier, chop it and leave it drop into the jar. So chop and drop. Now I have to be careful because I've also got my microphone wire. There we go, that's going in. Ooh, and I don't want to waste any, so I'm going to pop that in there. So I'm just going to go along and do this, and I'll chat about why you would want to use St John's Wort topically and make an external oil. So St John's Wort is amazing for the nervous system. Now St John's Wort is great for the nervous system, so for shingles, for neuralgia, for nerve pain, for anything to do with the nervous system, things such as sciatica, another great thing to use St John's Wort oil topically on. Now it's great for the nervous system, but it's also got great antiviral properties in St. John's wort. So if you think of like cold sores as well, you could be using St. John's wort in that way. Now, St. John's wort, there's a lot of antis, as I call them, involved in St. John's wort. Antimicrobial action, antiviral action, antispasmodic action, anti-inflammatory action, and not quite an anti, but analgesic action. So that is going to give you a clue about ways you can work with St. John's wort, and if you make this oil, why you might want to work with St. John's wort. St. John's wort also has great wound healing abilities. So things like cuts, bruises, sprains, anything where the body needs healing externally, in fact. Now, the one thing you need to make sure with St. John's wort oil is that you make it fresh. So normally when I make oils, it's always with dried plant matter, because you don't want water mixing with the oil, because water and oil don't mix and it's going to go mouldy. So I always use dried apart from St. John's wort, because you want to pull out the useful chemicals, the useful constituents within Hypericum perforatum, within Eurinllys Trydwll. You want to pull them out when they're fresh. And you'll notice you'll get a very vibrant colour coming out of the flowers very quickly. So we're almost full here. Now what I'm looking at doing, if I squish that down, I've got a bit of a gap. I want to leave enough room for the oil to get in, but not too much room, if that makes sense. So kind of, I want it to be bouncy so I can push it down, but not push it down that much. So I've got room for a few more in there. So St. John's wort oil, if you were thinking any nerve pain, any viral issues externally, then I would go for St. John's wort. I would also go for wound healing, and the other thing to think of amongst the wound healing, I suppose, but is for burns. And it's quite ironic really when you think that St. John's wort itself can cause photosensitivity, but the one thing that St. John's wort oil can be great for is sunburn itself. And in fact for burns. So that's another reason you might want to work with St. John's wort oil. Let's have a look how that's looking. Little bit, tiny touch more. I think one more head will actually do this. So let's look at, get a good one. Get a good one, Selena, for the last one. There we go. I'm going to choose that one right at the front. There we go, and just quickly snip that in. So, there we go. That's, you can see it, I can push it down a bit, but not too much. And what I want to do now, just take out the bit of grass that just fell in. I want to go up to the house and put some oil on this. So come up to the house with me. Okay, so we're up the house now, and all I need to do to this is add some oil. And it's that simple to make the oil. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the oil in here, and then I've got a choice. I can leave it, I like to leave it for a lunar month. And what you'll notice is, oh hello Nacho, Nacho's come to join us to make some St. John's wort oil. What you'll notice is that there'll be a red colour excreted from the St. John's wort, and that's the Hypericum coming out. Now it comes out a lot easier if it has heat. So you've got two options. You can either, what I sometimes do is put an old black sock on it, and then I will leave it out in the sun. I tend to put a black sock on it because I don't want the oil to be deteriorated by the sun. That's my nutritional mind coming in there. And I find that works quite well, but doesn't work that well sometimes in Wales because we need the sun. So the other way of doing it is you can pour the St. John's wort into a bowl, and you can put the oil on top, enough oil to cover it, and then set it up bain-marie style. So you don't want to put it directly on the heat. And I call it the warm method because it's far from the hot method. You want to do it as if you're melting chocolate. And I do it until the bowl starts to get warm but not hot, and then I turn it off. You just want to introduce a small amount of heat, or if you've got a seed mat, you could put it on a seed mat. But I like to leave it for a lunar month, just somewhere warm, because I feel that works really well with the fresh St. John's wort flowers. Now, the one thing, because this is fresh, there will be some water in it. So when I strain this out at the end, I always leave the last amount because we know our oil floats on water, and that last amount will hopefully be where the most of the moisture will be. And I don't want that to go in the oil because it can cause it to go rancid, and we don't want rancid oils. So to make it, all I'm simply going to do is open the jar. I've got my olive oil here, and I'm going to pour it on. And I want to leave it a few seconds for it to glug, glug, glug in. Is that delicious glugging sound? There we go. And you might see some bubbles raise. And I've brought it quite far up to the top because I want it to cover everything, so there's less chance of oxygen and oxidization and things going brown. And that's it. So the key thing now is I need to label this. I will just tilt it, agitate it around. This takes me back to my old photography days when I was developing films. Those of you that are old enough to remember might remember this. And I have a sneak peek to make sure the oil is still there. It doesn't need any extra, because sometimes when you agitate, you need to add some extra oil. So what am I going to do with this now? I'm going to label it. That's key, because it will look very different after a few weeks. And I will leave this somewhere warm, away from sunlight, because I don't want the sunlight to deteriorate the oil. And I will leave it there for a lunar month. And you will notice the oil start to change a red colour. Now, you will see on social media some herbalists showing it's turning red instantly and going deep, deep red instantly. Don't be deterred if that doesn't happen instantly. It can sometimes take some time. And as I always say, don't believe everything you see in the glossy magazine we call Instagram these days. So you will notice over a period of time that will change to red. It can benefit from having an agitation every day to get the oil flowing through and get it mixing with all those amazing herbs. And then simply, after a month or when it's gone that delicious red colour, you can then strain it. And by strain it, I just pour it through some muslin lined in a colander and leave it drip through, because it'll take a while to drip through, or you can pour it through a coffee filter in a funnel, and then you can bottle it up and use it for those three main words that I would use to describe St. John's wort oil. Nervous system, I would definitely use that. Antiviral action on the skin, and wound healing. So if you remember those, nervous system, antiviral action and wound healing, that's all you need to know to work with Eurinllys Trydwll, Pericum perforatum, St. John's wort. So diolch am gwylio. Thank you for watching. I hope this has inspired you to go and check out St. John's wort in your area and make your own St. John's wort oil. And if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's lots of other videos over there, even more videos on St. John's wort. And you can head on over to my website, selinawalker.earth, and sign up to my free newsletter. I'll see you all soon.